Hello everybody. So back for another book movie comparison. Been a while, I know, but I just finished The Ghost of Mrs. Muir, written by R.A. Dick, and we will be comparing the 1947 movie adaptation. The story is Mrs. Muir, Lucy, is a widow of 2 children, and she leaves her in-laws to go live on her own with her family and a maid. And she chooses a little cottage by the seaside called Gull Cottage, where it is inhabited by Captain Greg's ghost. They end up kind of meeting each other, and then little things happen, and then they eventually work together and become companions in a sense. And little things happen throughout the story, but ultimately Captain Greg is there for her throughout the story until the end of her days, and they both kind of walk out with each other, almost, something like that. One of the reasons why I wanted to read the book was because I love the movie so much, and I do want to get more into classic literature, so I figured I would just go ahead and start reading the book. And I did the book on Audible. Now that I finished with the book, now I like to compare both the movie and the book. While reading the book, or listening to the book if you will, I found that I didn't care for it as much as the movie, but I tried to just focus on the book itself, and I did for the most part. There are many changes that the movie makes, and I actually think they're all for the best. One of the biggest changes is Lucy in the book has 2 children, a son and a daughter. However, in the book, she says that her son is more of her in-law's child. Like, I guess she may have raised him and she had most influence on him, so he's kind of a snob. But her daughter Anna is more like her. So in the book, it's acknowledged that she doesn't like him. And even Captain Greg says, you may love your son, but you acknowledge the fact that you do not like him. And I don't think the 1940s would have looked happily on that. So they scrapped him, I think, for time possibly. But I think that was all for the best, because in the book he was mostly pointless. One of the other changes they made was with Miles Fairley. In the movie, he's portrayed by George Sanders, and he plays him with such suave and elegance and charm, but yet that cad attitude. In the book, he's pretty much a manipulative jerk. And one point when they're doing a romance scene, I believe, in the book, Lucy says that her children are off to bed. And he berates her, and he's like, you don't love me anymore. He becomes this manipulative monster, and it's a sign of a bad relationship. And Lucy is like, oh, no, I love you, don't leave me, I love you. But in the movie, it's played differently.
Martha's gone up. It's Anne's bedtime.
Just this once, pretend you forgot.
But I didn't.
Just this one night.
What's wrong?
I'm jealous. I'm even jealous of a little girl.
But she's my daughter. I can't just forget my duty to her.
When you're with me, I want you to forget about everyone else in the world. Your duty and what the world will say.
I think you must be a magician.
So George actually played that scene to, like, it was beautiful. Like, you can literally, if you read the book and then you watch that scene and you know this part, you would see that George Sanders played him magnificently, almost. And they actually made him look nicer by comparison. Now in the movie, he does, of course, mention that he wants her to forget all of her responsibilities and focus on him. But he says it in a way that makes him kind of sad. Like, he wants her all to himself. But in the book, he turns into this yelling lunatic. So that's one good change that I think they did. Plus, it's George Sanders. They also built on a lot of stuff. Like, in the movie, the wife tells Lucy about Miles and his philanderings with other women, and she pretty much leaves, and we never see Miles again. In the book, she kind of walks in on him with a date, in a way, and then she leaves him. So I guess in a way you could say that she ends up making that decision for herself in front of him rather in the movie. But yet if you also look at it too, in the movie the wife leaves him, as Lucy and her daughter Anna discuss later on. But in the book, she never leaves him. And it's like, okay. But we also find out that he died in the book. And in the movie, all we hear is that he was bald and pathetic and drank, I think. One of the other biggest things that they changed was Captain Gregg himself. First off, when we hear Captain Gregg in the book, we don't see him. The book pretty much says that it's a voice in her head, but it's not her own. And then we later, hear it's Captain Gregg, and there's a lot more with that. But the only time we actually hear of Lucy suggesting that she sees him, it's all in a dream, not literally. But in the movie, she does see him. It's not a voice in her head. But again, I don't know. You could have worked with that, but at the same time, it's Rex Harrison. I rather would have seen Rex Harrison than hearing his voice, I guess. I don't know. There's one other element that I'm not 100% sure on, and that's the sister-in-law. First off, I believe there's 2 sister-in-laws, maybe, but they don't explore both of them. Like, they only explore the one, I think. Don't quote me on that, I can't remember. But in the movie, it's both a mother-in-law and an aunt, or sister-in-law. And in the book, the sister-in-law actually gets a lot more time. And there's a point where she actually moves into Gull Cottage, and Captain Gregg does things to finally get her to leave. But he also encourages Lucy to confront her and tell her, hey, you are not a child, I'm a woman, this is my life, you have to deal with it. But in the movie, she really doesn't confront them. She's just more or less like, I'm happy here, please be good enough to shove off. And then Captain Gregg's like, okay, I'm going to squirt these 2 ladies out myself. So it's like, in a way, she defends herself, but in the book, she comes off as stronger in this particular moment. However, the problem also with Captain Gregg in the book is that there is a little bit too much of him. I cannot believe I'm saying this, but in the movie, it's a perfect balance. He's there a good bit, and then when Miles Fairley comes into Lucy's life, and he sees that she's falling in love or infatuated with him, he sacrifices his time with her and leaves. In the book, he never really leaves. He leaves twice, but he ultimately ends up coming back. There's never a time where he just leaves. And the thing with Miles Fairley in the book is Captain Gregg actually made that situation happen. Like, he actually got them to meet. And it wasn't the way it was done in the movie, because in the movie, they met by chance while writing the book. That's another thing. In the book, in the actual book, she doesn't write a novel about the captain until later on in the book. Like, during the 3rd act. And in the movie, it's like the halfway point. Because she needs money for the house. And so they end up writing the book together. She takes it to the publisher where she meets Miles Fairley. And they end up having a couple scenes together where it kind of connects. And that's decent storytelling to me. And again, it works out very well. In the book and movie, there are a ton of differences, but they're also similar. It's not like maybe The Wizard of Oz, where there's a few similarities here and there, but for the most part, the story is kind of just not at all similar in a way. Or it's not like Rebecca, where Rebecca was almost a straight shot exactly to a T like the book. But still, The Ghost of Mrs. Muir, there are a ton of differences, and I don't want to get into them all right now, because I do want you guys to actually read the book if you haven't already, and if you're interested. But there are differences between the book and the movie. In my opinion, I prefer the movie. The movie is just 10 times better. It's romantic, definitely. In the book, there is no romance between Captain Greg and Lucy. There are a couple scenes where they're really sweet towards each other, but there's not romance between them. That is another thing that the book did better before I end this video. At the end of the movie, and this is one thing my parents actually told me, they hate the ending to the movie because Lucy and Hannah, I believe Hannah's her name? No, Martha. Sorry, Martha. And they have an argument and she dies. And my parents are like, well, she died and they quarreled before she died. But in the book, the quarrel happens, but then Captain Greg comes back and tells Lucy, you get her back and you apologize to her. So he actually forces her to make things right before she passes away. And that's one thing I could say in the book's favor that I really, really liked. All in all, I have to say, the movie for me is a 10 out of 10, while the book is probably about a 6.5 out of 10. I know that's a little below the belt, maybe, but I prefer the movie over the book. So let me know in the comments below what you guys think of The Ghost of Mrs. Muir. Have you read or seen it? And let me know in the comments below if you want me to do any other particular requests. Bye! Have a great, wonderful day.